Welcome to Talent and Talks, the Talent Mindset Dialogue series by LinkedIn and ETHR World. I'm Himanshi Tiwari, and today we are stepping right into the heart of one of the biggest turning points in the world of work. And what this really means is simple. Talent is no longer about filling roles. The rules have flipped. Yes, skills are becoming the new currency, workplaces are juggling four generations at once, leaders are predicting attrition with the data, spotting high potential talent earlier and building capabilities that didn't even exist a few years ago. And through all this change, agility isn't optional anymore. It is the spine, perhaps, of every talent strategy. And that's why this conversation matters. We are joined by two people who sit at the crossroads of this very transformation every single day. Please join me in welcoming Garima Garg, Group CHRO at Uno Minda, a company that has traveled from being a component maker to a global force in advanced automotive systems. We're also joined by Ankit Khanna, Regional Business Head for North and East India at LinkedIn Talent Solutions, someone who sees talent trends shaping up in real time across industries. And in this conversation, we'll unpack questions that go straight to the root of this transformation. How does a legacy organization build a modern talent philosophy? What does hiring for innovation actually look like when your workforce spans plants, R&D centers, engineers, and shop floor teams? And also, how do leaders balance everyday business pressure with long term capability building? And maybe the most interesting one, perhaps, how do you build a culture where people don't fear change but experiment with it? So, there's a lot to explore, of course. Let's begin. Ankit, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Uh, so Garima, we talked about Uno being an organization which started in 1958 and how it has kind of transformed from being a component maker to like a global automotive giant. So in that context, the question that I would want to kind of kick off with is how would you describe your talent philosophy, and how has the organization's approach to people evolved as the company has grown?
Yes, Ankit, thanks for that question. To explain our talent philosophy, I'll have to take a step back and I'll have to give you a little context of what's happening in the industry. As you very rightly mentioned, that we are transforming from being a built to print kind of a company into something very different. And what does that mean? So see, Uno Minda, if you look at our business, and rather for that matter, most of the tier one component manufacturers in India, this industry really kicked off when Maruti came into the country in the 1980s. And the business model was that OEMs needed to create a supplier ecosystem in the country. A company like Uno Minda became a trusted partner to the OEMs. And what we essentially did is we found technical collaborators who had a product design. So they had a technology for a particular product, and we would work with them. We would take that product technology. We would work with them to convert that product technology into the process as to how will that product get manufactured, design that process. And we had the know-how to then produce it. So we knew about that entire ecosystem as to how to manufacture something if we have the product, and the process part of it we partnered on, right? So that's a capability. Now that's the build to print, right? So you pretty much have the whole design and you know how to put it into set a plant, manufacture. You could manage your local liaisoning, you could hire people, you could run a shop floor, all of it you could do. That's where we started. Where are we currently? Now, where we are currently has a couple of dimensions. See, first we have to understand that the sector has completely changed. Earlier we had traditional products, let's say switches or lighting, or mechanical products like, aluminum die casting or plastic casting kind of products. So either mechanical or electrical. Today, when we look at a vehicle, it is actually like a computer on wheels. It is not really a vehicle anymore, which means that the electronics component in a vehicle has gone up from say 10 to 15% earlier to about 50 to 60%, meaning to say that some of these traditional products, which were electrical, also have a big component of electronics. And plus, we have whole set of new products which never existed, like ADAS or sensors or controllers, which are all electronic. That's a big shift that's happening in the industry. The second shift that is happening is that the consumers completely change. Consumer expectations are of a different standard now, and we are all consumers, so we all understand that. So whether it is aesthetics, whether it is quality or predictability, we expect our phone, which is an electronics product, to work seamlessly. Now, multiply that by 10,000 because there are 10,000 more components, 10,000 times more components that go into a vehicle, and you cannot have a failure, right? Because a failure in a vehicle means, safety issue. And the third thing happening is the kind of growth that we are seeing. Manufacturing as a sector in the country, I think last year grew at about 19%, whereas our GDP grew at 6.5%, right? So that means manufacturing as a sector is becoming much larger in our economy. And also automotive has been growing at 10%, and we have been growing at 17%. So we are growing at 1.7 times what automotive is growing, and manufacturing as a sector is growing. So I mean, from a talent perspective, we have to deal with all these kinds of changes. But I think that on the talent front, it is absolutely a transformational shift that is required from the kind of talent that could run a build to print kind of a business to the kind of talent who can lead the company towards 2x growth or 2.5x growth in the midst of all of these changes that are happening. And I'll just close this question with the China example, because that's really where we aspire to be. See, China in 2000, which is 25 years back, was making about zero point 0.7 million cars. Today, it makes about 32 million cars. They are the largest car maker in the world. 60% of the global EV market is in China. The quality that they make isn't what we have known China manufacturing for, right? We've generally known China manufacturing for cheap products and not necessarily quality, but that's not the case when it comes to, vehicle manufacturing. So top-notch quality, top-notch designs, global aesthetic, global design at a cost which is super competitive, EV component leadership. So everything coming together, huge growth, huge profitability. That is really the benchmark for us as far as the India automotive market is concerned.
Wonderful to kind of hear and get your perspective on this. And I mean, coming to that, you kind of said that for industry 4.0, the kind of talent which is required is very different, and you have a very very diverse workforce, from engineers to manufacturing teams to innovators. From that, the question that I want to ask is, what do you look for in people when you hire, and how do you sustain that innovative mindset through their career journey after they join you?
Yeah. So, actually, the hiring approach, Ankit, is multidimensional, and it has to be multidimensional in the kind of context we have. And I'll start at the grassroots because it's also important to understand that how we hire at the grassroots level. When it comes to our associate workforce, our blue collar workforce, the focus is shifting towards deeper and deeper rural penetration. Because the more traditional automotive hubs, whether it is, the north, we have the Manesar hub, or we have the Chakan belt or the Hosur belt. These have been some of the more traditional automotive hubs, and these are saturated. So most of the OEMs now are going and setting up much larger plants in newer areas, right? And we have to follow suit, which means our first hiring strategy really is to go deeper, penetrate deeper into the rural space and hire people from there and then skill them, right? Because you don't necessarily get skilled people when you tap into these kind of geographies. But that is where the growth is, and that is where the expansion is. And it also makes sense because till we tap into the rural landscape, which is where 85% of India's population still resides, we cannot grow as an economy. The government is talking about 2047 Viksit Bharat, etc. So for us to really get there, this is an economic imperative, so to say, and we are doing that as well. But that means a huge effort on skilling, right? But it's an investment for the future, and that is something that we're doing extensively. We do look for technical skills. I think it's very important, given the context of the transformation that I spoke about, that we build those technical skill sets in the company. So whether it is software, whether it is product engineering, whether it is design capability, because we are also designing products now. So we also need designers who can just look at products and see it from an aesthetics perspective. How does the product look? So very different skill set, which you wouldn't associate with automotive sector at all. So we are definitely hiring for people with skills and expertise in the areas where our business is growing into. But third thing that we seek is we are seeking people with a problem-solving attitude. I think that is very, very important because all of the changes, again, that we are witnessing, we need people who can adapt to innovations, who can adapt to the changes that are happening, who can digitize and learn to work with digitization, who can look at data and draw insights, who can challenge the status quo, who can deep dive into problems and get deeper and understand the why. So all these things are very important. Who can work in cross-functional teams, who can break the traditional hierarchical mindset in manufacturing and not hesitate from questioning the status quo, and they can cut across boundaries and work across. So those are the kind of things that we are constantly looking to hire. We are also looking to hire, particularly in business roles, in business expansion roles. We're looking to hire leaders who are, who can deal with the unknowns, right? Because to grow the business in a market which is completely different, you need a very strong leader mindset. So at different levels, really, we have, different kind of hiring strategy, and that's how we're looking to expand our talent pool.
Right. So, I mean, we heard about, uh, right from hiring designers to hiring leaders, uh, across a huge, the whole industry is kind of changed significantly. And that is where, when we started talking even earlier, you kind of talked about how the automobile industry has evolved because of, electrification, electronics, sustainability. These are the kind of things which are driving change in the industry. And since it's a fast moving industry and you're kind of chasing growth, my next question comes is, as a HR leader, how do you as a business, balance between the needs of long term goals of, developing leaders, or upskilling people and preparing the workforce for the future versus, achieving the short term goals of business and revenue, etc.? How do you kind of bring that balance about?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and that's a constant dilemma that we have. Uh, but I tell you, when it comes to skills and knowledge, we treat it like uh, like an assembly process. So it has to be as defined, as predictable as a factory is, and as running a factory is. So you cannot leave it to chance. Right. So I'll elaborate on what I mean by that. So, we need certain skills on the shop floor. There are different kinds of manufacturing processes we have, very, very diverse set of manufacturing processes, from casting and molding to electronics line to various assembly lines, and we need different kinds of skills. So we have, for example, in-house technical training centers, which are part of every plant, and they are all designed to replicate the processes that are running on our shop floor. So we call it dojo, DOJO. It's a Japanese terminology, which is basically a technical training center. So we run those kind of setups where every operator who comes goes through that hands-on skill, learning the very process that he or she is going to run on the shop floor. And it is managed with a lot of precision, which means everything is defined. You come day one, you have XYZ, 3 days of X training, and then you have a certain process. And then when you go through this, there are skill levels which are defined. So we have 4 different skill levels defined for the operator. And there is, again, a lot of science behind how the operators will move from one skill level to another skill level. What training do they need to undergo? What assessment they need to undergo? So what I'm trying to say is that the whole skilling process is managed with a lot of precision, because when that operator goes on the shop floor and works on that machine, there is no compromise on quality that can be done. There's no compromise on safety that can be done. And also productivity is very important, right? So that's, one part of skilling. On the next level, we have on the staff level and, early sort of management and mid-management, we focus a lot on functional skills. Again, that process is also very rigorous and very well defined. Everybody has to identify 5 skills that are relevant for their job, and we have a tool by which we manage them. And there is a role-based architecture of the kind of trainings that are available to them to build their skills. There is an annual refresh that everybody goes through in terms of their self-assessment on each of those skills, which is then validated by their managers. And then there is, the plethora of options are available for them to upskill. But we leave the responsibility to upskill with the individual, but the framework is all very defined. And it's tracked. It is part of all the dashboards of the business dashboard, of the HR dashboard, as to how many people we have in each business at what skill level. Right? So there is a very strong manufacturing mindset we bring to our skilling imperative when it comes to the day-to-day skills. When it comes to leadership, and some of those skills, we have very interestingly deeply embedded practices around succession, around leadership development, around identification of high potential talent, around how we internally move people across different roles so that they get cross exposure into different businesses.
Wow. I mean, lovely to hear how you kind of grow people internally and invest in people so much as an organization. And the question then comes is, manufacturing is always seen as a traditional industry. However, Uno Minda has been at the forefront of transformation. So my question comes is, how have you built that culture where people are comfortable embracing change rather than being like overwhelmed by change, which continues to happen?
Yeah, I think we're somewhere on that journey. I wouldn't say that we have achieved what we want to on that journey as far as a culture transformation and embracing innovation. But like there are different pockets in the company where things happen differently. Like if you look at our R&D center, uh, you know, um, R&D center where you have top-notch engineers working on top-notch innovations, which equals anything that's happening in the world. So there we have very different kind of talent, and culturally it is like a technology company. Except that you're working on core technology and you're also working on software, but you're also working on hardware. It has simulations and it has all kinds of capabilities. Culturally, we do have a very we are very, very open to experimentation and failures and mistakes. Right? I mean, that is, again, something we very strongly believe in. We, in fact, propound bad news first. That is something that we propound as a culture. We are not scared of failures, and we have never, held people responsible for failure because of trying something new. Of course, repeated failures is a different thing, but failures in general, experimentation. So culturally, we have that ethos. We again, in terms of a culture of innovation, there are some strongly embedded practices, kaizens and quality circles. That at the grassroots, some of these practices are also very deeply embedded. It's a part of it's a ritual. Kaizens will happen. They are reported very religiously. They are followed through very religiously. Quality circles, innovations, idea generation. So at the plant level, a lot of these practices are, deeply embedded. For our businesses, there is a lot of product innovation that is currently going on, and we've had successes and we've had failures. But people have learned to work cross-functionally. So we have multi-generational workforce and diverse workforce. You'll be surprised to know that some of our plants have 70% women working on the shop floor. And again, this is not something, I mean, we haven't talked about it a lot, I think, but I mean, it's there and it's just natural. It's been there for a long time. And so with designers and with electronics engineers, with freshers, with women going into rural territories. So it's a very diverse workforce that we have ended up building. And so that also definitely spurs innovation. We're definitely breaking hierarchical mindsets. There are lots of areas where we have thriving cross-functional teams that are working, cutting across. To give you an example, so we've just started a pilot for various AI use cases in our functions. So while in businesses and our plants, we have pretty advanced Industry 4.0 practices, but in some of our functions, we're just working, and so we've got all our fresh BTech talent planted into each of these functions for reverse mentoring our leaders to get comfortable with digital and start using AI in some of their own ways of working. So all of these things help us keep a close tab on our continuous innovation culture. But then at the end of the day, there are our customers. They never let us lie easy. And our customers are very demanding, and customers are innovating. Look at the Indian OEMs and look at the kind of innovations that they are doing.
It was like so good to hear about the way you invest in people, about women in the workforce, about in terms of the innovation, how the company is embracing change. My last question comes that all these great things that you're doing, which we kind of heard about. What are you doing as an organization to spread this message to the larger talent community whom we want to attract as other HR leaders listening into this? Would love to understand how does an organization promote all of this goodness and communicates it to the outer world.
Well, I think that's a great question, Ankit. And I think that's a little bit of a wake-up call for us, because I do feel we don't do a damn good job of it, because um, see, manufacturing is not what it used to be. I think the traditional manufacturing archetype and how talent would look at a manufacturing sector versus what it is now, is very different. So I think as a sector, and definitely that includes us, we have to do a much better job of attracting freshers, attracting young engineers to make a career in core engineering, so to say, because we have every element of technology, real technology, right? It's not just software coding, but it's also software coding which goes into the vehicle, into different products in the vehicle. And so therefore our employer value proposition needs to really carry that message. And I wouldn't say it's not happening. It is happening, because manufacturing, and us included, are attracting very different kind of talent now, but at the same time, we have to do much more of it. And I think your community and LinkedIn and ETHR World and forums like these, as we have some of these conversations, I'm sure will contribute and help us in that direction. Because I do strongly believe that Viksit Bharat 2047 is sitting on top of thriving manufacturing sector, and that can only happen if we are able to attract the best of talent. So I look at your help to help us spread the message.
Thanks, Garima. And I think hearing this talk, I'm sure a lot of fresh engineering graduates would kind of start thinking about manufacturing and automobiles as an exciting place to kind of work. With that, let me kind of hand it over back to Himanshi.
All right, thank you so much, leaders. It was really a very interesting conversation, and I had the honor to kind of listen to each and every word, sitting quietly and think about it. uh, in my sense, it was very sharp, very grounded conversation, that the kind, that leaves you thinking about how fast talent strategies are changing and how much opportunity sits on the other side of that shift. And one takeaway for me is that a culture of innovation is built and not expected. Creating an environment where employees proactively contribute to ideas instead of feeling overwhelmed by change requires trust, clarity, and consistent leadership behavior. Change becomes easier when people see it as an opportunity and not a threat. And it is safe to say, perhaps, that Uno Minda is driving the new change. And to everyone watching, this is exactly why the Economic Times and LinkedIn created this series to spark real dialogue around the workforce of tomorrow and the leaders shaping it today. We'll be back with more voices, more insights, and more conversations that don't just talk about change, but also help us navigate it. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to you both as well.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you.